Welcome to You Don't Know Ball. Today, we are going to be tiering the last 15 Super Bowls. As always, if you don't know ball and want to know ball, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, let us know in the comments what was your favorite Super Bowl of the last 15 years or of all time. We have the top tier list, we have the good list, we have the bad list, and we have the terrible list. So, Dobbs, we're going to be starting back in 2010, and that was the New Orleans Saints playing the Indianapolis Colts. The Saints won 31-17. Where do you have this Super Bowl ranked?
Well, obviously, personally, it's going to be in the, the highest tier for me personally, being the Saints fan. But objectively speaking, and, comparative to the rest of the Super Bowls, I have to put it in the good tier, right? Like, it was a good Super Bowl, and the score is a little misleading to the extent of, Peyton Manning doesn't throw the interception to Tracy Porter. Who knows where this game goes? This game could be headed to overtime. This game could be headed in a bunch of different directions. So this game was very tight-knit all the way down to the end. It had the ambush onside kick that nobody will ever forget if you were watching. I mean, there was plenty of amazing moments in this game. The two-point conversion that was initially called off and then reviewed. There was a lot of electric moments in this game. The Colts played great football the whole game long too. It wasn't like it was just, it was far from being one-sided where the Saints were playing. As a matter of fact, the whole first half, the Saints pretty much got dominated, right? So it was kind of a good story of, bouncing back from the adversity on the Saints side of things, but also, just a classic Peyton Manning almost came back down, broke our hearts on that drive. Tracy Porter saved the day. There was a few things missing from it that would have it be in that absolute S tier, like one of the best Super Bowls of all time category. But I think it's right there, and rightfully so. And I think we're putting it right in the good tier for all the reasons I just listed.
The combined regular season record from these teams was 27-5, which is kind of crazy when you look at it like that. Peyton Manning throwing for 333 yards and losing is also insane. Holding Reggie Wayne to 46 yards on 5 catches as well. It was, I remember where I was when I was watching this game, and I think, like you were kind of saying, that onside kick probably determined the outcome of the game just based off momentum, and it was a very, very fun watch. I know I was super young. I was like 10 or 12 years old, but overall, I thought it was a pretty good Super Bowl as well. Moving into 2011, we have the Green Bay Packers playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Packers won 31-25. Dobbs, where do we have this Super Bowl ranked?
Got him. You know what? Got this one right in the top tier range. And again, I'm going to just say it before anybody in the comments starts saying it, because it's true. Look, we have been in what you could argue is truly the golden era of Super Bowls. I mean, there have been so many Super Bowls that we've been able to witness that are in this top tier range where they go right down to the wire. It is the last drive is determining the outcome of the game. This is the last play of the game. And if this play converts, then all of a sudden this team has a huge chance to win. And if they don't, they're done and their entire season's over. This was another one of those examples. Well, not another one. I should say the first one, but the first of many to come on these next Super Bowls, where you get back to the point is we just have had so many amazing legendary Super Bowls. This is the first one that I think of today we're going to fit into the top tier of just being a legendary Super Bowl, right? We got Ben Roethlisberger facing off Aaron Rodgers, the Packers being the underdog. This was Aaron Rodgers' first time really, really under the big lights in the spotlight, finally coming into his own, being a superstar in the league, and shows up 24-39, 304 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jordy Nelson, hell of a day, 9 receptions, 140 yards, 1 touchdown. Ben Roethlisberger, a little bit of a shaky day with the 2 interceptions, 2 touchdowns. Mike Wallace had a great day with the 9 receptions, 89 yards, a touchdown. This was also, too, funny enough, before Antonio Brown was Antonio Brown, even though he was still the punt returner, the kick returner for the Steelers. This is like vintage AB, where he wasn't even in the receiving rotation yet, in the receiving corps. So all in all, a very interesting Super Bowl with tons of lore, and most importantly, coming down to the last few plays of the game. If you're a Super Bowl that's high scoring and you're going to come down to the last few plays of the game, I think you would agree, Hunter. It's going to be pretty hard not to fit you into the most electric tier of Super Bowl.
No, I mean, even in the regular season, like those last few plays of the game are so electric and so suspenseful that when you're doing it on the biggest stage, it's not like an NBA finals, an MLB finals, an NHL finals where, oh, okay, maybe it's game one and it rolls down to the last couple seconds. It's exciting, but you know that there's going to be another game. This is like the Super Bowl is game 7 every single time. Every play matters. What I found interesting just looking kind of at the box score of this Super Bowl is the Green Bay Packers only ran it 11 times, which is kind of insane when you think about it. Like, obviously there was 2 rushes by Aaron Rodgers, but I would assume those are probably scrambles. But 11 rushes in the Super Bowl? I mean, it's not like wrong or bad. I'm trying to think back. I don't remember this Super Bowl a ton, but it's just funny, like trying to picture a team only running it 11 times.
No, yeah, that is definitely an interesting point about it as well. And then, yeah, also, and then to that point, yeah, the Steelers over here ran it a lot. Yeah, ran it a lot more. Steelers over here ran that ball. What is it? 23 times to the Packers. Yeah, exactly 11. So definitely was an interesting Super Bowl. Came down to the wire. First legendary one we got on the tier list of the day.
So moving in to 2012, we have the New York Giants versus the New England Patriots. The Giants won 21-17. Dobbs, where do we have this one ranked?
I think to nobody's surprise, this one has to be fit into legendary tier. And again, you know what? Maybe not for the same reasons as the other ones, perhaps not as electric. There's certainly some major snoozer periods of this game. But if we're talking great defense and, just some of the most amazing moments in Super Bowl history when you finally realize that the Giants were actually going to pull it off. I mean, that's really all you can say to it at this point, right? Is that this is one of those ones where you're saying, look, the Giants, big underdogs, but that's what made it so special is that, you know what? And again, this is the second one over Tom Brady. The odds were already stacked against them that the Patriots were going to be able to come handle work on them the second time. You got the Giants showing up again, right? Taken away from them at the last moments. I mean, same concept as before. When the Super Bowl comes down to these last moments, the Giants were the underdog, the big bad Patriots. I think, maybe it's a little bit more of it's the lore that pushes it into that special tier.
Right.
But I think, for those reasons, alone on the lore, I think it has to be in the special tier because of what it meant. Where, again, not only did Eli take the one ring away from Tom with the perfect season, he came and took the second one away when they were also, again, another 9-7 wildcard team. It's just incredibly impressive. You can't find a way not to fit into the S tier unless you're a Giants hater.
Well, you also got to think about it. Like, the whole season runs on storylines. So for this to be like a storyline Super Bowl where Eli Manning has already beaten, like Eli Manning stopped Tom Brady from having 9 Super Bowls, which is insane when you think about it. Like, that's the storyline. And I think it's funny too because Peyton Manning doesn't have a Super Bowl over Tom Brady. It's his brother Eli. And it was very fun to watch. I do remember this Super Bowl a little bit more than the last one. I do want to make a statement though, is we've been saying like this was the 2011 season Super Bowl, but it happened in 2012 because of I've been doing that for the last couple, but just so we get that clarified. But yeah, no, it was definitely both the Giants Patriots Super Bowls were really fun to watch.
No, yeah, I just want to add in last little tidbit, but like, and Giants fans always remember this was one of the, like the Hakeem Nicks game right here. That 10 receptions, 109 yards. Hakeem Nicks went GOAT mode for the squad that day for the Big Blue.
Moving into 2013 to 2012 season, we have the Baltimore Ravens beating the San Francisco 49ers 34-31. Dobbs, where do we have this game?
We got this one. We're going on a streak here, Hunter. This is another one that's in the top special tier. And like I said, it's going to be a theme today because we truly have been blessed to be in the golden era of the Super Bowls. I mean, this one just had everything, right? I mean, it misled you. You're saying to yourself, the Ravens are going to kick their ass and this is going to be, I might be able to go, go get some food, go, take a bathroom break. And I don't even have to worry about missing anything because it's going to get out of hand, right? And then before you know it, halftime strikes. And it gives us a blackout. And we've never seen anything like this before. So all of a sudden, the mystique's already peaked. And then, you're thinking, okay, that's a fun little story, but we're going to move past it. It's not going to be anything. Little did we know that blackout was going to lead to the full-blown rejuvenation of the 49ers and lead this into being one of the best Super Bowls in history. And again, because you'll always say it. Look, when a Super Bowl comes down to literally the last few plays of the game, which this is another example where the Niners had a chance to to snatch defeat from the jaws of whatever. It's the snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. I'm mixing up my analogies here, Hunter, but you get what I'm saying? They had a chance, they didn't do it, but they very well could have. And it went, there was so much. This was the bowl of highs and lows, right? You know, and even if you weren't a fan of either team, you're watching it, you're just like, oh my God, oh my, it's like watching a boxing match where the blows just keep going back and forth. That was exactly how to explain the Super Bowl. And I think this was one of the most fun ones I've ever gotten to witness in my life. I think you'd agree with that one.
Oh yeah, I mean Colin Kaepernick with 364 all-purpose yards like is insane. Because I don't want to say people forgot like how dominant like Kaepernick was when he was good. Like obviously he trailed off like very badly, and that's why he eventually found himself out of the league, among other issues going on. But with that being said, like the fact that he threw for 300 yards, and then if you look at, the Ravens, Anquan Boldin had 100 yards as well. Like Anquan Boldin, I think maybe one of the more underrated receivers in NFL history. I think he spent a lot of time in Arizona with Larry Fitz, and Larry Fitz is just such a crazy player in terms of how good he was that it kind of overshadowed how talented Boldin was. And I mean, this is the classic like Joe Flacco wins a Super Bowl, right? Like you look at history, it's like Brady, Mahomes, Manning, and then Flacco. Like Flacco's got one. And Flacco balled out on the Browns last year. So obviously, this run that the Ravens had in the playoffs. And I think when we talk about storylines as well, as we previously have, like the Harbaughs, brother versus brother in a Super Bowl is a very, very cool concept.
No, for sure. And one last thing I wanted to add before we move on to the next Super Bowl is, like to your point about Joe Flacco. Look, I want to be clear. Two different careers, like, right? Joe Flacco is a much different type of player. There's no arguing that, and his longevity was much better. I'm not debating any of that. But what I am saying though is this is what's funny about how NFL fans work, and this is true. Let's just say on the reverse that the Niners pulled out that last drive. Colin Kaepernick found a way to get that thing in the end zone one last time. He would be regarded as a legend forever, and everybody would be like, yeah, well, you know what? Despite his downfall, like, it doesn't matter because that was kind of like Nick Foles. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, who cares how bad he is now? Like, he's won a Super Bowl. It doesn't matter. So I think NFL fans sometimes are a little too quick to forget, like, it's literally one or two plays that for a lot of you guys define someone's legacy. And it's like, yes, did Colin Kaepernick have an egregious fall off and a lot of other things down the road that, we won't even touch on, but a lot of things that changed his career? Yeah, absolutely. But at his peak, to your point, Colin Kaepernick was out there hooping regardless of how weird it was, and mechanically, however you want to say it. He was making it work, man.
Moving in to the 2014 Super Bowl between the Seattle Seahawks and the Denver Broncos, Seattle won 43-8 in probably one of the more lopsided Super Bowls in modern history, if not the most.
Yeah, I think we agree on this one safely here, Hunter, for sure. We got this one in the bottom tier. There's no doubt about it. This was a terrible Super Bowl. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't know, not any spoilers. No, I can't say that for sure. This is one of the only terrible ones we have on list today, though. Because, back to the golden area of Super Bowls. But look, there's not much to say on it, right? I mean, you kind of knew. How about this? And I'll leave this one to you after this. You knew exactly where this one was going after literally the first offensive snap from scrimmage.
Yeah, that botched snap really it felt like it kind of set the tone for the game. And it felt like the Broncos really couldn't shake it, right? Like the whole time after that botched snap, it just felt like, oh my God, they can't shake this. Like this set the tone for everything. And it was just kind of disappointing to watch. And I remember when I was watching this, I was just like, wow, what a letdown for the year. It's just like, this is the way we're going to end the season. It was very frustrating.
No, especially after the Broncos had a historically good offense. There's just so many things about this game that are absolutely out of control. Like, and you could go back to the biggest thing is that the Broncos just never got that run established after that first mistake. Tried to get going to the pass, averaged 1.9 yards a carry on 14 rushes. And then funny too, I just want to point out, maybe the craziest stat of this game. Marshawn Lynch carried the ball 15 times. Percy Harvin carried the ball twice. Percy Harvin had 6 more rushing yards than Marshawn Lynch. Like, this was just a weird Super Bowl all in all, despite how terrible that it was. It was also kind of weird in many aspects when you look at the box score. But you know what? The Seahawks showed up to play. They kicked their ass. And mine is Demaryius Thomas having 13 receptions for 118 yards. There's not one bright spot on the day for the Broncos, and that's really all you can say about this game. 4 fumbles, 2 of them lost for the Broncos. It was just one of those days in the worst way possible for the Broncos.
Moving into 2015, we have the New England Patriots playing the Seattle Seahawks. The Patriots win 28-24. Dobbs, where do we have this Super Bowl ranked?
There's no doubt about it. Unless you're a Patriots hater, you understand. This for obvious reasons, mainly lore implications. It fits into the terrific S-tier Super Bowls. I mean, right? This was kind of like, in a sense, almost a very like, I'm trying to think how to say it. It was an incredibly, incredibly important moment in like the lore and the future landscape of the NFL. Because I think you can make a lot of arguments that, if the Seahawks don't choke this game away and they just punch that thing in the end zone and the Patriots lose this game, right? All of a sudden, just maybe the Seahawks find their gel really, really well. You get more free agents that want to come over. Maybe it's the start of the Seahawks really going on an absolute dynasty run. But in retrospect, what really happened, as we all know, is this where the Patriots just said, no, it's still our time. And it's still going to be our time, right? Like, it was kind of like a pendulum swing moment. And, just the way that Malcolm Butler made the play. I mean, it's you could argue it's the greatest play in Super Bowl history, an incredible moment. But not just that, it's also the resiliency the Patriots showed that whole fourth quarter. Just that it was peak Tom Brady. Nothing's going to shake him. Every pass is going to be precise on point. There's going to be nothing that's going to be out of rhythm. It was pure vintage Patriots. It was pure peak Seahawks. And the vintage Patriots just found a way to edge them out with that Belichick genius. It was just, you really couldn't even write this one up. This was one that you just had to really witness yourself to understand how incredible this one was.
Well, I think this Super Bowl had very long repercussions from it because watching the Seahawks team kind of fall apart after this Super Bowl in terms of, I don't think the team ever fully forgave Pete Carroll for making this call. And the Seahawks just have not been, like, they've remained competitive, but we saw the Seahawks separated from Pete Carroll. I do think if they win that second Super Bowl, they probably could have competed for a little while longer at the level that they're playing at, because I just think the way they lost the Super Bowl, especially with Marshawn Lynch being in the backfield and you're so close to scoring and getting those points to win the game, and you put it in the hands of Russell Wilson, who only threw the ball 21 times and completed it 12 times, and you have Marshawn Lynch who had over 100 yards. Like, it's one of the most mind-boggling calls, I want to say, in Super Bowl history.
No, and people always go back to this. This is what I always want to say whenever this comes up, Hunter, because it's so true. People always go to, like, and don't get me wrong, you're right, and everyone's right for it too. You totally could hand that thing off to Marshawn Lynch and you got a good 75% chance to punch that thing in, right? But I will think of it like this too. There would have never been a better time in history of football to just pull out the simple read option with the lead blocker and have Russ just walk into that end zone. The fact that one of the two was not the call with the timeout is just, and again, I have no affiliation to the Seahawks in any way. That is painful to watch, even as not a fan of the team. So I can't even imagine how much that one hurts as a Seahawks fan. But then on the other side of it, I also can truly not imagine the joy and just absolute relief and surprise the Patriots fans felt when they realized, like, yo, we literally just stole away another Super Bowl. Like, chips against us, we were literally fucked, and we found a way to pull out another one. Two completely just opposite sides of the pendulum, but it's very interesting for that reason. And that's also why it's an S-tier Super Bowl.
Moving in to 2016, we have the Denver Broncos versus the Carolina Panthers. Denver wins 24-10. Dobbs, where do we have them?
got this one right in the bad Super Bowl tier. And you know what? I think everyone who would watch would agree with this, because I think something you would agree with 200 about this one that really sucked is I can remember going into this one thinking to myself, like, okay, you know what? And again, I always, I'm an objective ass fan. Like, yes, the Panthers, the Falcons, right, the Bucks, when it's NFC South rivalry and we're playing them, oh yeah, it's up. Like it's smoke season, right? Like we hate each other. But if it's not like us playing them and they have a chance to represent the conference, right? I'm not going to sit here and hate on them. Like, I was genuinely excited. Like, okay, you know what? The Cam Newton Panthers, Luke Kuechly on defense, the boys, you know what? Like, this Panthers team is really set to go win their first Super Bowl, and I think they could do it. I think they're going to show up and play a great game, and it was going to be a fun, back and forth matchup where vintage Peyton Manning was going to show up one last time, and it was going to be a shootout battle and a fun duel. And we didn't get anything close to that. We got the worst version of Cam Newton. We got the worst version of Peyton Manning. We got the best version ever of Von Miller. If you want to take away one positive from the Super Bowl, it's that we got to see one of the best pass rushing performances in NFL history. But outside of Von Miller just dominating this game, that's kind of the problem. Is like, really, what do you remember about this game? There's really nothing memorable about it. That's kind of exactly why this game is just, it wasn't terrible.
The Cam Newton fumble where he didn't jump on it?
Well, exactly. I would say, like, there's so many moments in this game that were just so lackluster. And I think that's the thing, too, that kind of stinks about it the most, even to an extent. And don't get me wrong. If you're Peyton Manning, if you're a Peyton Manning fan, if you're the Broncos, you're taking it. I just think, you would have liked to see Peyton Manning go out on a higher note, winning the Super Bowl. Like, at least have the man throw a touchdown. At least have him QB fucking sneak that thing in the end zone one last time. He didn't even get one score in his final game. And not there's anything wrong with it. Walking out on top with the Lombardi is something he'll always remember forever, regardless. I just wish that there was a better climax to the end of the story, because this was truly a climaxless Super Bowl in every way.
Yeah, it was not a great one. I think, unfortunately for Panthers fans, this kind of sparked, like, I guess similar to kind of the Seahawks, not as drastic, but just kind of the downturn of a franchise. And it's really crazy when you think about, like, how much, like, the feeling from the biggest game in the world can carry into that next year, and how much it can affect, like, the future of your franchise. And I think that's why when you see teams get blown out so badly, like, unless you're like a great quarterback, like, for example, like, the Broncos got blown out by the Seahawks a couple years prior. But it's like, it's Peyton Manning. Like, you have the top guy in the game, and it's like, he didn't rely on his physicality and athleticism to win him games. Similar like a Cam Newton. We know that, like, once Cam Newton had that shoulder injury, he was just never the same. Like, that's the reality. So it's unfortunate, because after this year, it kind of was like, okay, well, are the Panthers ever going to be this good again with the current, franchise quarterback?
Yeah, no, you're spot on, bro. This was basically the start of the Panthers' downturn. Very, very quick and steep afterwards, might I add. It definitely was. It didn't happen gracefully. It happened really fast.
No, and then now we're here with Bryce Young.
Now we're here in the darkest era, the David Tepper era, as they call it.
Yeah, we'll see if Dave Canales can revive them, but I'm not super stoked. Moving into 2017.
Not too sold over here.
Oh my God, I keep doing it. My bad, bro. I keep thinking you're done. All right. Actually, moving into 2017 this time, we have the New England Patriots beating the Atlanta Falcons 34-28. Probably the worst game in Falcons history.
Yeah, Falcons fans, I'm sorry we have to retouch on this one. I really am. But I think, look, let's be objective. It's an S-tier Super Bowl. It's a terrific Super Bowl, right? There's no other way we could argue anything besides that. And you know what? Is it another S-tier Super Bowl purely off of Tom Brady's brilliance? I guess you could say, yeah, you know what? But that's how things work sometimes. Look, call it for what it was. This was very similar to what we were just saying almost about the Ravens and the Niners, right? Except the difference is that the team who started off hot and almost choked, they actually choked, right? I mean, that's just the big difference, but still same vibes. Like, you're watching and you're like, oh, I can go get me a snack. I can go step out on the patio for a little bit. Like, I'm not missing too much right now because and that's it. Not the real football sickos like me and Hunter. But if you're a casual person watching the game, it was kind of like, all right, I can take my foot off the gas. Like, I think we're seeing the direction this game's going in, right? And then all of a sudden, that vintage Tom Brady kicks in, that Julian Edelman kicks in, that Gronk, right? And all of a sudden, hold on a minute. The Patriots are going to win this game, and you could feel it happening. And that's the craziest thing about this game is I can literally remember there visually still. My dad texted me back and forth like, yeah, I don't think they're going to choke it. Like, there's just absolutely no way. Like, no, it's getting a little bit out of control, but they'll score another field goal, and it's going to, they'll figure it out. Like, there's no way that the Patriots are going to really win this game. And sure enough, it went from like, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, no, Dad, like, they're for sure going to like lose this game, and they're choking this game. I promise. Like, this is Tom Brady. Are you forgetting who it is? That to me is how I think always will make this such a memorable experience. Is even when the Patriots were still down, like by like 14 or like whatever 10 or whatever it was when they finally made it really good, getting close. It was like, no, like this is over. Like that's how dangerous that these Patriots in this dynasty was. This was the epitome of that dynasty's resilience. This was Tom Brady's best season ever, probably from a advanced metric standpoint, from carrying that roster when they had a terrible defense and they had a midline receiving core. This was just peak pinnacle Tom Brady. And I think for that reason alone, that's exactly why I would say it was an S-tier Super Bowl.
I think another reason is like the fact that it's the 28-3 joke is so used now still. Like, it is still like something that is brought up multiple times a year. And I think when you talk, like I said earlier, I think Super Bowls are a lot about the storylines from the season. And I think if you can, for example, like the other, the New England Seattle Super Bowl with the interception on the 1 yard line, 2 yard line. If something sticks around, I think the Super Bowl is very, very memorable, and with the comeback, I mean, is it the biggest comeback in Super Bowl history? I think it is, right?
I would say I'm almost positive. We'd have to do a double.
Yeah.
I'm almost positive it has to be, though, right?
But to throw for 466 yards in the Super Bowl is insane. So this was definitely one of the best Super Bowls of all time.
And the fun fact on top of that is it's not even Tom Brady's most yards thrown in a Super Bowl. And what I want to say, too, before we move on to the next one is just because this is what really breaks your heart so much if you're a Falcons fan. And I genuinely like feel for Falcons fans. You look at the box score for the Falcons, you're like, Matty Ice had one of the best games of his career. 17-23, 284 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Devontae Freeman, 75 yards, a touchdown, averaging 6.8 yards a carry. Julio Jones, above 85 yards. It was literally just the Matt Ryan fumble and then the clock mismanagement where it just sold this game, and it will always break your heart if you're a Falcons fan. I mean, it's
was
truly painful. Seriously, I mean, it's painful even if you're not a Falcons fan. I cannot imagine being a Falcons fan for this day. Falcons fans, resiliency. I as a Saints fan, I still shouts to you guys for sticking with your boys after this one, because this is probably the toughest loss in history. Call it for what it is. I mean, true. This has got to be the hardest football loss in history, right?
Guess who the OC was?
Can I wait? Hold on a minute. Was it Mr. The reason he can't be in? Hold on, I can't. Spoilers. No spoilers. No
okay,
spoilers.
yeah,
We'll get
yeah.
to that when we get.
Okay, all right. Moving into 2018, we have the Philadelphia Eagles beating the New England Patriots 41-33. Dobbs, where do we have this Super Bowl? Is it really even a question?
Yeah. Again, this is what's so funny is, and again, if you're the audience, please understand. Yes, I know that we are loading the top tiers. But you can't even argue against it. There have been so many top tier Super Bowls that we have witnessed in our lifetime. This was the definition of like, holy shit. Like, this Super Bowl, I think and I don't know, maybe it's just, let me make sure I'm not having any like bias here or anything. Oh yeah, no, this was the one, I would say, over the last 10 years that I think I had the most fun watching, for sure. Where it's just like an absolute heavyweight brawl, just knockout punch after knockout punch where you get close to knocking them out. just for the opponent to get back up and be ready to throw another haymaker your way, right? It was just the football equivalent of haymaker after haymaker. Tom Brady at his absolute pinnacle, 505 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Nick Foles playing out of his fucking mind. The greatest game Nick Foles will ever play at the best time he could have ever played it. Doug Peterson pulling out all the great calls when he needs to pull out all the great calls. Danny Amendola going for 152 yards. Chris Hogan going for 126 yards. Gronk going for 116. I mean, what is there even? Corey Clement on the Eagles going for 100 yards. Nelson Aguilar going for 84. I mean, there was just so much in this game. So much in this game. So many fun moments. So many explosive downfield passes. This, to me, was the most fun Super Bowl, I think, to watch over the last 10 years. And it's been close, but this one has got to be the one that takes the cake for me. So undoubtedly, Hunter, it's got to be in S tier.
Yeah, Nick Foles with a Super Bowl. And I mean, it's even more crazy than Joe Flacco winning one, strictly because Nick Foles has been kind of a career backup for a long time. So definitely, I mean, I don't really know what more there is to say about this because of how crazy it was and the fact that they put up 41 points. I mean, Philly will always be remembered.
No, that there's just so much. And I think, is this the only time? Hold on. Only 3 white dudes. Oh, 3 white dudes combined for over. They all had 100+ yards receiving.
That's
Hold on,
crazy.
we have to make a note.
We'd have to go back to like probably the 60s or something like that. Like the 60s. I was gonna
say, bro, we got to go really far back in history. That is just a hilarious tidbit that I've never noticed.
But they were probably running the ball hella back then, so it doesn't even matter. Like this is definitely. I mean, we could probably find like a stat or something like that, but
that is just hilarious to me.
Yeah, no, it's actually ridiculous. Moving in to 2019, we have the New England Patriots beating the Los Angeles Rams 13-3. Dobbs, where do we have it ranked?
We have got this one in the bad Super Bowl tier. And I don't think to anybody's surprise, it wasn't like abysmal, because if you like a good defense, there was definitely a lot of very good defensive moments in this game, right? I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. Where Devin McCourty, the Devin McCourty swat on the touchdown pass to Brandon Cooks. Right. This Patriots defense just played an absolutely amazing game. And truthfully, to the Rams' credit, the Rams also played an amazing defensive game. It just came down to Tom Brady and Gronk cooking them on the last drive when they really needed to, and they really needed to pull it off. They did. You take that drive away from the Patriots, Rams still had a chance to win this game, which obviously didn't happen. But the point is it was a close game with good defense. So it couldn't be thrown into the bad tier, into the terrible tier, right? That's why I think it just fits soundly into the bad tier, because there was definitely minimal action for being a Super Bowl game. This kind of felt like more a game you would watch around like week 4 or 5 of the season when teams are still trying to feel each other out. The vibe just wasn't there for the Super Bowl. It never felt like the Super Bowl. Even watching this Patriots celebrate and everything, it was kind of just like, that was really disappointing. It's just kind of the simplest way you could put it, not the pinnacle ending to the season you wanted, but also not the lowest point possible like the Broncos and the Seahawks.
It's also really crazy to see how often Brandon Cooks has been a part of Super Bowl teams. Like, he feels like he's been around for so long, and I know he's like 30 years old, but Brandon Cooks has just been around for a long time and a part of some really successful teams. So that's just very interesting to me. Obviously, also Todd Gurley. I mean, kind of upsetting to see where his NFL career went, but I think people really forget how dominant he was for a short span of time.
No, absolutely. That's also what makes this game so impressive on the Patriots end, is that the Patriots had, and I think you could even say it's almost what made Sean McVay evolve a little bit more, is because this was back when the Rams were not, I don't want to say so reliant on their run game but translating to the pass game and that's what the Patriots did, is they just shut Todd Gurley down, where Todd Gurley had nowhere to go. He had nowhere to move. He had no options as a check down out of the backfield. And when they took Todd Gurley out of this game, I think they took the Rams out of this game, Hunter. And that's kind of the story of this Super Bowl in a sense.
100%. Moving in to 2020, we have the start of the Mahomes era. Kansas City beating San Francisco 31-20. Where do we have this one ranked, Dobbs?
All right, we got this one in the good Super Bowl tier. And I think that, there's not really any way you could argue with that one, right? It's it's close to being a top tier Super Bowl, but in reality, there's just too many things that would take it away from being top tier. But it was a great watch nonetheless. And to your point, look, it always have great lore implications because it was the start of the Mahomes era, as you just said. You know, when you would think back on this game, I think the biggest thing you'll think back to, though, is, and you can even say for both teams, right? A lot of missed opportunities, obviously more for the Niners than the Chiefs, but there was, a fair amount of turnovers in these games. If I'm not mistaken, please double check here. We have, so two interceptions from the Chiefs, two interceptions from the Niners. And so two interceptions for both teams being the two turnovers. Obviously, the Niners ones were much more costly. And the storyline of this game was really just, that Niners offense that was really having a really good year all year. I don't want to say dominant because it was the Jimmy G era and it was still never really dominant, but a very productive, very well on the ground moving, 49ers offense that just never was able to get going this day. Nobody was able to really find their stride. This was another Steve Spagnuolo masterclass for the Chiefs. He's had a lot of them recently. And, Patrick Mahomes, despite the mistakes, still had a fantastic day. Tyreek over 100 yards. Sammy Watkins basically got to 100 yards on the 98 yards. Underrated in the Super Bowl. But Damian Williams, 17 carries, 104 yards, the touchdown to seal it off. Damian Williams, always low-key Kansas City legend for this game, I'd say for sure. If you're a Chiefs fan, you always go back to Damian Williams was a huge part of this Super Bowl, certainly. And just this was really, the one that got the Chiefs dynasty going. And we'll always remember, we'll always go back to that. So for those reasons, again, and the score also I want to add is just a little misleading to the extent of it was much closer than being a 2-score game until literally the last, very few minutes. So, and the Niners had a chance, as we know, to take that lead on the Emmanuel Sanders, where it was the overthrow. So it was a great game. It was close to being in the top tier, but for a few reasons, we kind of just got to shut it out of the top tier.
Yeah, I really did like this game. And I remember I was watching my apartment and I remember seeing that overthrow and I was like, oh, they're cooked. They're cooked. Like that was the chance. But I mean, I can't say I was upset. Not a big 49ers guy, but I think that was obviously the moment where all the Jimmy G friction, I think there was always friction, but I think this was the moment where it just kind of fractured that relationship. And I mean, this is where they go, now we're on the Brock Purdy train and, they didn't get it done. Brock Purdy was younger. Obviously he got injured the year before they went to the Super Bowl and we'll get into that, but the 49ers have been involved in the Super Bowl in this series, will be in this video like 3 times, and it almost feels like the same story every time that they just can't get it done.
No, it is the same story. And I was going to say too, to your point about Jimmy G, I think what made this so, and this is something I think the whole audience, everybody can remember this, because it's a good lesson in life, seriously. You remember back when Jimmy G, when he first started getting hot with the Niners and they were making their run, he said something to the media in terms of I always knew I had this in me. I used to look at Tom Brady at practice and be like, oh, you guys think this guy is better than me? I think I'm better than him. See, this is why you don't talk until the job is done, because now you end up in a situation like Jimmy G where we have literally historical record of you saying some out of pocket shit like that. And then I can just point back to you and be like, you let your ego get in the way of the work. You can't do that. Life lesson on top of everything else.
Moving in to the next Super Bowl in 2021, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beating the Kansas City Chiefs 31-9. Dobbs, where do we have it ranked?
Yeah, we have this one in the bottom tier, the garbage tier, the terrible tier, however you want to say it. And I don't think that there's got to be much explanation behind this one, right? Mahomes' entire O-line, for the most part, was completely injured, completely devastated, playing with the backup unit. Yes, Mahomes haters are going to say this is the worst game of his career, which it probably is, but really to no fault of his own. When you're playing with none of your starting offensive linemen against the best D-line in the entire league in the biggest game of the year, we can kind of figure simply how that's going to have rather horrible implications on how the game is going to be played. What's funny enough is The Chiefs actually got the running game going pretty well this on this day. 6.3 yards a carry, 107 yards on 17 carries. The problem is that the pass game just never got married to it in any way, and it just was a terrible, just no flow from the Chiefs offense. And on top of that, Tom Brady again not at his best in the same way, but just purely methodical, making every single right decision. And he, because Tom Brady played this game very much from the sense of nothing had to be overdone, right? It just had to be simple, right read, move the chains. We just got to chew this clock out and we're going to win this game. That's what they did to a masterclass. He only had 8 incompletions, 3 touchdowns, 201 yards. The Bucs run game that day, 33 carries, 145 yards, 4.4 yards a carry. I mean, by that math, we're moving the chains every 3 carries on 33 carries, absolutely punching that clock out. It was just an absolute blowout, and that's exactly why it's going to be a terrible Super Bowl. The Chiefs never even had a chance. The Bucs had the ball the whole fucking game, and they dominated them, and they played a fantastic Super Bowl, truly cementing the legacy of Tom Brady as the GOAT. If it wasn't already far from being at that time, going to the second team, closing it out in dominant fashion, it's the GOAT. And that's really the main takeaway from this game that we'll always remember, is that this was where Tom Brady really solidified more than anything. Not how about not GOAT? How about that he was the most important person at the Patriots dynasty? That's really what this solidified.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing for me is just watching Mahomes having to run for his life like the whole game. I think that was like the biggest thing I took away, outside of the fact of Tom Brady has more Super Bowls than any NFL franchise. And literally, this is what gets me like kind of hot when we talk about, like, when people say Tom Brady, like, I don't know how you could ever argue that Tom Brady is not the best quarterback of all time. You know how hard, like, Hall of Fame quarterbacks maybe have 1 or 2. Like, there's outliers that have more, but like 1 or 2 is really like, that's really good. Not a lot of people win Super Bowls. And we were talking about it a little bit before, Dobbs. That's why the Mahomes shit is so crazy to me. How can you not think we are watching? I understand it's talked about all the time. Like, oh, is he the next Mahomes? Is he the next Mahomes? Like, Mahomes is the staple. But we are literally watching the next Tom Brady before our eyes, and no one is realizing like how, I don't want to say no one. That's a lie. I'm gassing it. But a lot of people are not, I feel like, truly putting into perspective how special of a player that he is. Like, yes, they gas him up. Yes, he has like one of the best play callers. But at the same time, like, you have to make the decisions on the field, and only a few people can do it at such a high level like Brady or Mahomes.
No, and that actually brings me perfectly to my next point of what I was going to say, where I think way too many NFL fans nowadays, and you hear the way that they'll talk about it. It's become a very common argument where people will try to like discredit the careers of like Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, even Peyton Manning before he got the second ring, which, to like the point we already just were saying, it was the defense carrying hard that year. But that's beside the point. The point is, getting 1 ring itself, 2, and is an incredible accomplishment that most players never have. And there's now a circle of NFL fans that are like, he only got 1 ring. Like, what a bum. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me, dude? Like, Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes have set you guys up with like the most unrealistic expectations possible. And it's truly disappointing. Like, if you can't understand how much of a spectacle and how much dedication and drive it takes and how special that these 2 players are, and you're going to use them as the comparison point for other legendary quarterbacks, that's just disappointing. Because if anything, not only does it take away from the greatness of the other prior greats, it also takes away from the greatness of Brady and Mahomes, which is that they are truly different.
No, 100%. Moving into 2022, we have the Los Angeles Rams beating the Cincinnati Bengals 23-20. Dobbs, where do we have this Super Bowl ranked?
We got this one right here back into the special terrific tier, bro. And I think, you know what? It's weird because this is one where not a lot of NFL fans like really ever go back to this one for whatever reason. It never really gets brought up, like how much fun this one was to watch and how back and forth and how you just, I think the theme of this game for me was that, normally when you're watching a bowl, you can kind of feel like one team pulling away, or you can kind of have an idea. You're like, I think they're this, I think X or I think Y is going to pull it out, and here's my reasoning. Watching this one, I can remember I literally till the last whistle, I was like, I really don't know who's going to win this game. Like this really, like there was never one moment where it was like, yeah, it's over. Like it was like, no, this was really going down to the final plays of the game. Like until Joe Burrow had, AD have the greatest career play of his career on him. I mean, you didn't know what was going to happen. And even then, ball in midair, Joe Burrow spinning, getting tackled. There was a chance that somehow Simon J. Perine could still come up with that thing. I mean, literally till the ball hit the ground, this game was still up in the air where you didn't know what was going to happen. I think that's what made this game so special to me personally. We'll always remember it more than anything probably is the Cooper Kupp solidification game. This was the game where Cooper Kupp said, okay, I'm the best receiver in football this year. And there's not a doubt about it. But on top of that too, don't forget T. Higgins had 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Joe Burrow, not a fantastic day, but Joe Burrow had a really good day. Took 7 sacks also. I mean, back to how that Bengals O-line has kind of just been, even when he's been at his peak, still was something that needs to be addressed. It still was something back then. Stafford with the 2 interceptions, but it doesn't matter because his defense played lights out when they needed to play lights out. There's a lot of storylines in this game, but the top one being Stafford finally got the ring. Cooper Kupp solidified one of the greatest receiving seasons ever. And the Bengals just fell so short to starting what feels like could have been the start of something really special because they've gotten close again multiple times. Now it's just about the Bengals actually finally sealing the deal and getting back to the promised land. I think which is also another kind of just side story that still is translating in dripping into today.
I think the Bengals will have a shot at it this year. I think with this Super Bowl, obviously OBJ going down, I think it was in the first half when he tore his ACL, I think it was. He was balling out. And I think with the Rams, it was really interesting because do you think if they lose this Super Bowl, McVay is still there? I know it's like, I think he probably would have stayed because he wanted to get it done, but you remember like after they won, he was kind of thinking about, I'm trying to remember, there was like talks of him walking away and going into broadcasting.
No, because it was after that first bad season he had. Yeah. No, to your point, I think he would have been really hungry to finally get the Super Bowl. Okay. I think from my perspective, what it really was is that after it's almost like actually the opposite, where it's kind of like after he got it, it was kind of like in his head, like, like this was the pinnacle. And then when he finally had a taste of like the low point again after hitting the pinnacle, it was kind of like a whole like, do I have the drive that it takes right now to get us back to the pinnacle? Because I was listening to an interview where he was talking about this, and he was saying that it really was more than anything like motivational related, where he had to find something to like restrike his motivation to like be a great coach. And then he said last year's team, where they went through a lot of adversity and people counted them out at the beginning of the year, then they still finished having a great team. He said that that's what really reminded him why he wants to keep coaching. So I think to your point, I think it would have driven him to get back and then finally get it done. I think getting it done is kind of what made him start to translate into the mindset of like, what's next? You know what I mean?
I feel you. Moving in to 2023, we have the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35. Dobbs, where do we have this one?
Yeah, to absolutely nobody's surprise that watched the game, we have this in the terrific S tier again. I mean, I know I'm like a S tier broken record today. I'm sorry, guys. How could you argue against this one? This one would probably be right up there at number 2, where, like I just said about the Eagles and Patriots, this would probably be number 2, I would say, in terms of like, oh my God, like just cinematic moment after cinematic moment, heavyweight punch after heavyweight punch. Oh my God, Mahomes is done. He's done. The Eagles are going to win. Oh shit, Mahomes is back. What the fuck is going on? There were so many moments in this game where it was just cinema. Like this was a cinema Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Even though it was not a good moment, Jalen Hurts dropping the ball, Nick Bolton running it back for a touchdown, the momentum swing. Like there were so many moments in this game where you're just like, man, this is why we love football. This is one of those games that really reminds you why you love football. peak Mahomes, playing out there on one leg, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. This was the beginning, really, you could say, of Isaiah Pacheco's legacy of being kind of a legendary chief. He was already a runner before this, but man, that hit he took from C.J. Gardner-Johnson, holding on to that thing, trying to secure that Super Bowl dub. There were so many great moments in this game. And, more than anything, you go back to Andy Reid, the genius, running the same play 2 times and to essentially win the Super Bowl on 2 separate touchdowns. It's peak Andy Reid. It's peak Mahomes. It's also truly peak Jalen Hurts that we've seen so far. I mean, there was a lot of peaks in this game. It was an amazing Super Bowl, and you'd have to be drunk to argue otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I remember about this game is it felt really fast, right? Like, it felt like the game just was moving pretty quick, and I was like, oh, wow, this was like a really great game. But like, I wasn't like caught up in it. I personally, like, I was like, this is a really good game with 2 really good teams. But like, to me, it was just that. Like, to me, there was nothing special about it.
See, I think that's just, to me, that's what made it special to me, though. I think what made it special is it was the combination of Jalen Hurts having the best game of his career. And I didn't expect that. I kind of went in expecting, like, I could see this just being like, Mahomes is ready for the moment and Jalen Hurts is not. And that was just, and it's not at all what we got. We got Mahomes on the one leg. And that's what I think, too, I'll always go back to, is you see Mahomes on the bench, like, in excruciating pain. And you're like, oh, man, like, the Eagles are about to walk away with this thing. And before you know it, it's the Undertaker meme. Mahomes just put his helmet back on. And you're like, oh, fuck. Like, this shit's about to get crazy. And that's exactly what happened. That, to me, that's what, to me, made it a special game.
I think also, too, it's like, we've been talking about the repercussions. Like, the Eagles have kind of been off since this year. And I think this year is going to be very telling with Sirianni getting Kellen Moore, getting Vic Fangio. They're signing Saquon Barkley. And I think we're going to know, like, kind of who the Eagles are after this year, because after the Super Bowl, it just kind of hasn't been the same.
No, I mean, like, that's the 100% truth. Are we going to see Sirianni pull a Brad Stevens, just move up to the front office instead? He's like, yeah, I was part of the success, but we need a new coach. No, I mean, jokes aside, but
I guess
I'm just saying,
like, Sirianni's kind of a culture guy, and like, you have a guy calling the offense, you have a guy calling the defense. So it's kind of just like, if you can't get it together, if your team's not very good, what are you doing?
The Eagles are going to be very interesting to monitor this year for obvious reasons. Because, you either bounce back this year or we're going to have a lot of questions.
Moving into our last game, we have the Kansas City Chiefs 25 beating the San Francisco 49ers 22 in the 2024 Super Bowl. Where do we have it, Dobbs?
To close us out, you know what? I don't care if the comments are hating. We're spitting facts over here, Hunter. We got it. We got this in the S tier, the terrific tier again. And because, you know what? Storylines on top of the result of the game, right? We got the rematch. We got Shanny versus Andy Reid. We got Mahomes versus, it's not Garoppolo again, but we got Brock Purdy, the successor, however you want to call it, the new sheriff in town for the Niners. And you know what? I think the biggest thing about it is I thought, very similar to, like I said recently about a few other games, is this was one of those ones where, you came in and I'm thinking, you know what? I can see Mahomes just completely outshining Brock Purdy and Brock Purdy really falling apart and this game not even being close. Not at all what happened, right? Brock Purdy stepped in, had himself a really good game. Like, yeah, it wasn't a perfect, amazing game, but for what he was expected to do, what he had to do, Brock Purdy did basically everything he had to do. Christian McCaffrey, another great game. I mean, another legendary game, you could even say, especially if they were to win this game. Niners receiving core never got going too much, but they found a way to make it work regardless. But on top of it, it doesn't matter because back to, just what made this game special. Mahomes in the clutch. Another game that's coming down to the last plays of the game. You don't know what's going to happen. The Chiefs, are they about to kick a field goal and are the Niners going to get the ball back? Are they going to find a way to punch it in? Nope. Sure enough, it doesn't matter that you're going to find a way to punch it in right in overtime and you're going to have not a shot. And it's just, this was peak. And I misworded what I meant. I meant to say Are they going to kick a field goal and give the Niners the ball back and give them a chance to go win the game? No, sure enough, they're going to find a way to just win it right here. I mean, this was peak, not peak. It was close to peak Mahomes. And because you could probably argue a few other games that was pure peak Mahomes. This was as close to peak Mahomes as you could get, though. And I mean, Travis Kelce, another legendary game. Another legendary game from Steve Spagnuolo on defense. It solidified the Chiefs as a dynasty. Has to be in that tier, right?
I mean, I think once that, like, you started to feel that comeback, I think the turning point really was when Drake Greenlaw came off the sideline and tore his shit. Like, once that happened, they just started picking apart the middle. And I don't know if Drake Greenlaw doesn't get hurt. I don't know if the Chiefs win this game. I think it's also very possible. But as soon as it went to OT, or as soon as they were scoring in the fourth, I was like, oh, this game is over. Mahomes is going to win this. Nobody has the clutch gene. Like Brock Purdy, good quarterback. He does not have the thing that makes Patrick Mahomes special. He doesn't. And we've talked about it. Shanahan choked. He has choked in all the big games. It has become, this game was the game that solidified it as a thing. Like, there are people talking about, oh, Shanahan can get it done, blah, blah, blah. He has not been able to. And I think he may be one of those coaches that he may not find that Super Bowl in his first phase of coaching, like as being a head coach. I think it may be kind of an Andy Reid route where he's got to go to a second team to get it done. We saw Andy Reid with the Eagles.
Which would be absolutely crazy to think about, but it's so possible, which is what's so wild about the NFL. It's about the peak results. It's not about getting close. And to the point of how we always go on these rants where you have some fan bases like, it doesn't matter. We had fun and we had a good season. It's not about that. No. It's about bringing that fucking Lombardi home.
Well, it's also another thing, Dobbs.
And if you're not, you're regressing.
You got to think like, okay, you're my head coach. I take all the orders from you. I listen to you. We do what you say, and we know that the Shanahan system is very, very strict. And, people have made comments that Brock Purdy is basically like Shanahan out in the field. But when you think about it, if you're the guy making all the big decisions and you just can't get it done, like, your players are going to pick up on that. Like, they're going to be like, okay, well, this guy hasn't been able to get it done for us. Like, in reality, I know he can only control so much, but I'm not saying that is inherently Shanahan's fault. I'm not saying it's anyone's fault, but it's just something I feel like that just kind of weighs over the team that, like, damn, we have folded every single time.
Oh, no, it absolutely does. And that's the thing is, and again, like you're saying, it's not like it has all to do with Shanahan. There's plenty to do with just the team in general, but mistakes that individuals have made during these games. But when you have been the guy calling the offense for 3 separate Super Bowls where you have the lead and then you choke the lead away, there is inherently something wrong with the philosophy of how the endings of these games are being called. That's just objective, right?
100%. Any last thoughts on these Super Bowls before I wrap it up?
Final thoughts. Gang, we are truly in the golden era of Super Bowls. I think that this tier list has been the proof.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been tiering the last 15 Super Bowls. Let us know in the comments what your favorite Super Bowl over the last 15 years or all time has been. Leave a like, subscribe, and as always, have a great rest of your day.